I want to talk to a younger version of myself. Not the 25-year-old, not the frightened young engineer in the third-floor office that smelled of ink, who was building something from nothing and was honest about his fear because he had not yet learned to hide it. That Harold I am not worried about. I want to talk to the 38-year-old, the one who had been at the firm long enough to know what he was doing, who had built a reputation that was beginning to precede him into rooms, who had won enough arguments and been right enough times, and been respected enough consistently that being right had stopped feeling like an achievement and had started feeling like an identity. That Harold. The one who had confused being right with being good. The one who did not yet understand that those two things are not only different, but are frequently in direct opposition to each other. The one who was about to spend 30 years winning, and losing everything that winning costs. I have something to tell him. My name is Harold Voss. I am 84 years old. My heart is running at 38%, and I was right for most of my adult life, about most things, and it cost me more than almost anything else I did. Before I go any further, I need to ask you something. When was the last time you were wrong inside a relationship that mattered to you? Not technically wrong, not factually wrong in a way that required correction. Wrong in the way that cost something. Wrong in a way that required you to put down something you were holding and admit it, and sit with what the admission felt like. Write how long ago in the comments, just the time, a week, a year, a decade. Because the answer to that question tells you something important about the relationship between being right and the people who are choosing to stay in your life despite it. Harold, you are 38 years old and you have just won an argument with Margaret about the kitchen. Not a significant argument, not one of the real ones. A small argument about whether the kitchen in the house you are about to buy faces the right direction for the morning light. You were right. The kitchen does face the right direction. You had done the research. You had the compass bearing. You had the architect's assessment. You were right in every way that being right can be measured. And Margaret said, "Fine, Harold, you are right." And you heard that as agreement. It was not agreement. It was the specific and exhausted surrender of a woman who has been in enough of these arguments to know that the cost of continuing is higher than the cost of conceding. And you heard it as agreement. That is the first thing I need to tell you. Being right is not the same as winning. And winning is not the same as the other person agreeing with you. Sometimes the other person says fine because they love you, and the relationship is worth more to them than the argument. Sometimes they say fine because they are tired. Sometimes they say fine because they have learned over years of living with you that the argument will continue until they say fine, and saying it sooner costs less than saying it later. Margaret said fine to you in a specific way across 30 years of marriage, and you heard it as agreement every single time. And every time she said it, something very small transferred from her account to yours. Not money, not love exactly. Something more specific than love. The willingness to try. Margaret was willing to try for a long time. She was willing to argue, to push back, to bring her own view into the room and defend it against yours. But the willingness to try is not infinite. It runs on something, and what it runs on is the belief that the trying might produce something. That the argument might actually resolve into something other than fine, Harold, you are right. By the time you are 45 years old, Margaret has stopped bringing certain things into the room. Not all things. Not dramatically, just certain ones. The ones where she already knows the ending, and you will not notice for another 10 years, because you will still be winning. The second thing I need to tell you, being right made you lonely in a way you did not recognize as loneliness. I want to be specific about this because I think it is the part that men who are like me least understand about themselves. When you are reliably right about things, a specific dynamic develops in your relationships. People stop bringing you the parts of themselves that might be wrong. Not because they are hiding from you deliberately, not because they do not trust you, because the experience of being wrong in your presence is uncomfortable in a specific way that the experience of being wrong in other people's presence is not. In your presence, being wrong means being corrected, being shown the accurate version, being guided from the incorrect position to the correct one, with the patient efficiency of a man who has the answer and is waiting for you to arrive at it. That is not a comfortable experience to seek out repeatedly. So people stop seeking it out. They bring you the parts of themselves that are already correct, already formed, already beyond the reach of your correction. And they take the uncertain parts, the unformed parts, the parts that are still working themselves out. They take those parts somewhere else. To people with whom being wrong feels like thinking out loud rather than failing a test. I watched this happen with my children across 20 years of being their father. They stopped bringing me certain things, not because they did not love me, because being wrong in my presence had a cost that being wrong elsewhere did not have. And the things they stopped bringing me were the most important things, the uncertain things, the frightened things, the not yet figured out things that are the actual substance of a life being lived rather than performed. I received the performed versions. They took the real ones somewhere else, and I was right the entire time. I want to tell you something specific that happened in 2003. David was 31 years old. He was in a difficult period professionally, a business venture that was not going the way he had hoped, financial pressure, the specific anxiety of a man who has taken a risk and is watching it not pay off in the way he had believed it would. He came to dinner in February of that year. After dinner he said, "Dad, I want to ask you something about the business." And I sat across the table from my 31-year-old son and I told him what I thought, accurately, specifically, with the full weight of my professional experience and my financial understanding and my particular ability to assess a situation and identify what needed to change. I was right. Everything I told him was correct. He nodded. He thanked me. He drove home. He did not come to me again with a business question for 6 years. 6 years. Not because my advice was wrong, because receiving it had cost him something that he was not willing to pay twice. I did not understand that at the time. I thought he had taken the advice and was implementing it. He was not implementing it. He was protecting himself from the experience of being assessed by his father when what he had come for was something closer to being heard by him. I gave him the right answer. I did not give him what he needed. And those two things are so different that confusing them can cost you 6 years of your son's trust. I have thought about that dinner many times. The third thing I need to tell you, the cost of being right compounds. It does not arrive all at once. It does not announce itself as a loss you can point to. It accumulates in the small and invisible increments that all the most significant losses of a life accumulate in. A conversation Margaret stopped having around 2001. A question Claire stopped asking around 2004. 6 years of David's business questions going somewhere else. Thomas, who had learned by the time he was 12 that bringing his father an uncertain thing produced a certain kind of response that was helpful in a specific way and unhelpful in a more important way. Each of those things was the cost of another year of being right, and I did not see them together until they were already gone. Here is the fourth thing, and this is the one I most want you to hear. Harold, you are going to be right for 30 years, and it is going to cost you Margaret's full openness. It is going to cost you David's trust on a February evening in 2003. It is going to cost you Thomas's Saturday morning uncertainty. It is going to cost you Claire's unfinished thoughts and her half-formed plans and the versions of herself she was still working out. It is going to cost you the version of your family that exists in the space where being wrong is safe. And you are never going to get those things back. Not fully. Not even in the last 2 years when you finally put down the need to be right and just sat with Margaret in the kitchen and listened without correcting, and she looked at you in a way she had not looked at you in 30 years. Even then, the 30 years were already spent. What I want to ask you to do is this. The next time you are right, and you know you are right, and the other person is about to say, "Fine, Harold, you are right," stop. Not because you are wrong, because being right in that moment is not the most important thing available to you in that moment. What is available to you in that moment is the other person, their uncertainty, their unfinished thought, their version of the thing that is not yet correct, but is alive and searching and real in a way that the correct version is not. You can correct it, or you can be with it, and being with it is the thing that builds the kind of relationship where people bring you the uncertain parts, where your son comes back to dinner with the next business question instead of waiting 6 years, where your wife says what she actually thinks instead of, "Fine, Harold, you are right," where your children take the unformed things to you because being wrong in your presence feels like thinking out loud. You cannot have both. You cannot be reliably right and reliably the person people bring their uncertainty to. Choose what you want more. I chose being right for 30 years, and I would give every argument I won to have Margaret look at me the way she looked at me in those last 2 years. Not because I had finally become right about the right things, because I had finally stopped needing to be right at all. Leave me a comment. Write the last time you were wrong in a way that cost you something. Just how long ago? I read every single one. And if someone you know is winning every argument and losing everything that matters, send this to him. Before 30 years go past, while I still can.